Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. I'm Anissa Teron, and I have my co-host here all the way from the new paddle place in Santon. And then we have Cori joining us all the way from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, right?
Yep.
Yes. And it's still morning for Cori, so her day's just started. Ours is pretty much on the go. I'm just pressing start for our Instagram followers. Thank you for joining us, and please do engage, ask questions. Cori is coming with a wealth and breadth of knowledge, and really I am so excited to have her on today, because this is the lady that makes your vision come to life in writing your book. So I'm just going to read a little bit about her bio. CEO of Aurora, and I might not do this justice, Coriolis. Is that correct?
Yep.
Coriolis Publishing. Okay. Works with business owners who have a transformational story to share. So pretty much around what is your hero's journey story, and how did you shift from what the segment is about, from that grudge state, and used it to your advantage and came out top with grit and shifting into grace and gratitude. She helps them easily write and publish a book for their brand that they can leverage to create a legacy and be seen as an expert while building a relationship with the reader. So without further ado, I really do just want to hand over to Jamila just to greet our guest, and then maybe you can start, Cori, with letting us know, where did this start for you? Why did you embark on this journey?
Thank you, Anissa, for that very warm welcome. And I welcome all of our listeners, and good morning and good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are. We're so glad that you can spend this time with us, and excited to have Cori on with us, and excited to hear her story, but also to get a feel of how she's helped so many people to realize their dreams, because that's what I think it is. Most of us are insecure about ourselves. Anissa, you and I have been through this process, and it takes a lot, and it takes a special person. And I'm grateful that I had Anissa with me, to nudge me along and write my chapter. And hopefully from this, it'll evolve into something a lot more. So, Cori, over to you. We're excited to hear your story. So please go ahead and share with us.
Yeah, thank you both for having me on. I'm excited to tell you guys a little bit about what we do and my background. So I actually have been a professional in the writing and editing business for 20 years now. I spent the first 10 years working for some federal government assignments in the United States. I was a writer and editor for a couple different branches of the government. And when I left there, it was kind of a funny story, because they ended up, where I was working, they ended up cutting like half of the staff in the PR department all at once. So basically all the senior staff was booted. And so when I left there, I had no idea what I was going to do. I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at home, and I was tired. I didn't really have a plan of like, oh, okay, well, next step in my career is going to be this. And I actually ended up being told on my daughter's first birthday what was going on. So it was kind of a not so very happy first birthday for her. But a couple of my friends encouraged me to start my own business. They knew my writing pretty well, and they knew that that was something that I could help other people with. So I started out freelancing, doing press releases and web copy, things like that, whatever different business owners needed. But as I was connecting with business owners, they started asking me about how to write a book for their business, because by that point I had already written 5 novels. I self-published them. So I knew all the writing, the editing, the cover design stuff, like all of the pieces that went into it. But what I found out was that people who are coaches and speakers, they want to share their story, but sometimes they just don't know how. you always think, oh, okay, I'm going to write a book. And you think, I'll sit down and write a book. But a lot of these people, they would sit down and just kind of stare at the screen. They weren't sure what to talk about because, our story is so big. We've lived all these things, and to condense it down into something that's manageable for someone to actually read can be really challenging. So that's when I started talking about, how I could help them as a book coach. I didn't even know that was a thing until I started as a freelancer and, dug around online and was looking for how I could possibly help people with their books. I was also doing some book editing. So those two things kind of went hand in hand. I started out doing book coaching and then moving into editing their books. But something I discovered there was that if I had coached them through their story, I knew their story almost as well as they did. So it made it very hard for me to edit. So I started bringing in editors. And at that point, I realized, there's just so much to this process, from the concept of, your idea all the way through to having a book and knowing what to do with it afterward, that I really needed to just take a lot of that off my clients' plates. So I opened the publishing house in the spring of 2021. And it was kind of funny. I was watching a movie and they were watching the Aurora Borealis, so the Northern Lights, and they were looking at it and I was like, oh, those are my colors. I love the greens and purples and blues. And I always felt so drawn to that. It's like a crown on the earth, the Aurora Borealis. It's this light. It's this beautiful thing that everybody wants to be a part of. And that's how I ended up naming my business. But I always like the kind of fun, pun sort of things too. So I just stuck my name in instead of Borealis. So you have Corialis because I took the bore out.
Love it. Absolutely love that. So Cori, you actually did start with your own hero's journey. You were in this ordinary world, having a secure, well, in inverted commas, secure job within the government institution. And, you feel like you're taken care of. And with a 1-year-old and 3-year-old, this must have been the most daunting experience ever because, your kids are young. That feeling of imposter syndrome shows up, like, who's going to want to take me? What do I do next? So this was quite a courageous move on your part to actually embark on this journey to start off with. And I just want to acknowledge that first and foremost. And I mean, it's Women's Day here today in South Africa, as I said. And I just want to acknowledge you as a woman for taking on that journey, because it's by certainly, whether you're married or whether you're a single mom, it's still not an easy journey, because the expectation is that we take on the more dominant role as moms and as caregiver on the home front. So kudos to you, Cori, for stepping into your power. But what were some of those emotions and that feelings that came up first? Because with all of us, when we're in this ordinary world, we'd rather the devil you know than the devil you don't. And you fortunately had people that knew you that said, go and do this. What was that turning point that made you actually take the leap into the unknown?
Well, it was pretty much my only option. I, at that point, was working from home. I had been working from home for a few years. I had some medical issues and they weren't able to accommodate me very well on site. So they let me work from home. And because of that, I had between my husband, myself, and a part-time nanny, we were kind of juggling the childcare. And so most of the jobs that I applied for, they wanted you on site. And I would explain to them, like, I have children, I have medical issues, and they just were not interested in hiring me. And for me to have been able to go on site, I would have had to somehow find childcare that was full time. And in the United States, it's very hard and it's very expensive. And I had 2 kids, so they were, it would have been really difficult to find one center that had 2 open spots like that. And also, not having a budget for it, it almost made more sense for me to just stay home and not work because of the cost of childcare. So that was a big driving factor. And one of my big challenges was up until that point, I had not gotten a lot of positive response to me saying that, I was a writer or I was a creative. A lot of people just kind of go, oh yeah, everybody's a writer. And that really knocks you down, especially when you're there and you're like, I know I'm very good at what I do. And to have people just brush you off like that, it can be really devastating. So I was really struggling with a lot of those sort of things along the way too, is, trying to pull myself up and say, all right, they probably don't know what they're talking about and they haven't read my stuff. So they have no idea what talents I have. And I think, a lot of times as women, we are put in these positions where it's like your skill set's questioned. You feel in your gut, you're like, I have to take care of my family. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. I wanted these kids and now what? I'm going to go work. So there's all of these sort of things going on in your head. So I had a lot of that too. But what really sealed it for me was as I was working and as I was figuring things out, I discovered that there were so many things that I had been missing with my previous job, especially connecting with other people who I really enjoyed talking to. I didn't feel like I quite fit in where I was. Like there were a few other writers and I loved them. They were wonderful people, but overall, it wasn't a really like welcoming, warm, caring sort of environment. And when I started connecting with women business owners, I found that they were so supportive and so caring, and they wanted to hear about you and they wanted to check on you. Like during the pandemic, I wasn't going out a lot for networking because I was staying home and trying to keep, my family safe and healthy. And because of that, when I first started going back out, everyone was, oh my God, Cori, you're back, and giving me hugs. So having that sort of environment, I think, is really important. And, I wasn't getting that with a regular job. And I found it when I was, whenever I started doing my networking and building my business.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if we've lost my co-host. Oh, yeah, there she is. Welcome, Ronald. Ronald's also our regular visitor from the US. Thank you for being here. Do tag Cori and the rest of the people that you know also from the States. Please, we would love for your interaction. Jamila, do you want to respond to that amazing story
Yes,
from
yeah.
Cori and how she embarked on this journey?
Absolutely. And Anissa, you mentioned that we are celebrating Women's Day here in South Africa today, and August being declared as Women's Month. And I think that we are always considering or acknowledging the celebrities out there who are, doing the most in the world and accomplishing certain things. But it's so important for us to consider the yous and the me's. We are also the foundation, I think, that if we stand together, we
Jamila?
Anissa, can you hear me?
No, I was about to say from my side, I cannot hear. Cori, do you hear her well?
Yeah, I could hear.
I hope we have.
Ah, how about
Is the
now?
bandwidth on my side a challenge? Just so I need to know.
Corey,
Yeah,
can
I
you?
can hardly hear you, Jamila. There's quite a distorted.
Yeah, I can hear her. It sounds like
Cori?
wind, maybe. Yeah.
I think Anissa might be having a little bit of a problem with
Okay,
hers.
so you know what I'm gonna do? Yeah, it sounds like the bandwidth on my side. I'm gonna go out and come back in again on my side.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Yes. So as I was saying, I think that it's so important for us to acknowledge the everyday woman and to acknowledge all of our successes and accomplishments, which we tend to overlook because we feel that in the humdrum of getting on in life, of making a living and, making sure that our families are okay and everything around us is working well, we forget about um, how much we're doing. Um, And also, we tend not to look at the challenges and the difficulties that we've gotten through, the hurdles that we've gotten over. And I feel that that's such an important thing for us to acknowledge and to celebrate amongst ourselves. I know that you said that, it was really difficult for you, and that eventually you got to the circle of women who were so supportive and helpful. And that's something really important that I think women need in each other's lives, is to have that strong circle of support around you. Otherwise, it's really difficult, but also for women to be brave enough to ask for help. Have you found, Cori, that maybe that's perhaps not the usual, and that women tend to be fearful of maybe showing their insecurities or their shortcomings by having to ask for help?
So I think it depends on the person, but I've always felt like it wasn't acceptable to ask for help. I've had a lot of people in my past, especially, when I was growing up, when I was in college, when I would ask for help and they were kind of annoyed by it. I remember specifically, I went to see a professor in the chemistry department. I double majored biology and English because I wanted to be a science writer. And I went to see him and I was like, I'm not understanding this. Can you help me out? And he was just kind of like, did you do the practice tests? Did you do this? He was like, I have another appointment. Just annoyed with me, not, hey, I have another appointment. Do you want to come back later and we'll talk? And what I found there was so different, like in the English department, when I would go and talk to one of my professors, they would want to hang out. They wanted to support me. And I don't know if it was because it was the departments or if it was men and women or what it was. But I imagine some of my female professors had been through the same sort of thing where they were just kind of brushed off and they wanted to serve. So I feel like as a business owner now, some of those things that I saw growing up, I imagine other people saw that too. And that kind of puts you in a position where you feel like you want to serve and you want to take care of people. And, as a mother, you want to be very nurturing. When I meet new business owners or, people who are kind of younger in the world of business or whatever area, I always want to be like, oh my God, here's this resource, here's this. And I know that that's what I've found, as a business owner too. People were like, here you go. But for ourselves, you don't necessarily want to ask for help because you've been kind of trained that nobody wants to help you, or because you've been trained to think, well, if you ask for help, you're stupid. You're really not, and people really do want to help. So I did want to make sure that I mentioned that. You kind of have to flip it on its head and say, if someone reached out to you and asked you for help, what would you do? And the answer is almost always, I would jump in and do everything I could to help them.
Absolutely, 100%. You always want to consider what you would want for yourself, and then offer that to the next individual. And with your publishing, have you found that you've had people come to you who are confident in what they've written and their story being told, or do you find that you've had to also like try to nudge people along where you found that they've had some talent, but not quite have the confidence yet to stand in their light?
I've had a variety of people. Some people will write their manuscript and be perfectly comfortable with it and bring it to us. And of those people, it's a mix. We get some people who've written something really amazing, and then some people who weren't really sure what they were doing, but they felt comfortable sharing it. And that's something that we needed to work on a little bit. So with everyone, I do try to make sure that they understand that their story is important and that I'm not going to let them publish something that isn't good, because that's always a question too. And we're going to work on it together to make sure it's the best thing that we possibly can put out. And then of the people who come to me who want coaching, because I do offer the coaching services too, I've seen a variety. And there's some people I will sit down and have to basically pull teeth to get their story out of them because they just want to give me the highlights. It's like the difference between like a children's book and a novel. You can take like, let's say a Disney princess movie, because most people have seen those. You can take one of those and condense it down to a children's book, but you can also turn it into a novel. And I've had people come to me and they're basically giving me the children's version of what their story is. And I have to ask lots of questions. And I don't know if that's a confidence thing or if that's just that they are a very concise and to the point sort of person. But it can be fun working with those kind of people, because then I get to kind of guide the narrative and say, I'm really curious about this piece, or you're not giving me much here, so obviously this is something that is kind of sitting funny for you. Let's talk about that. Why does that not feel good to talk about? What do we need to get across to the audience? Or, is this a part that you're really not comfortable sharing? Let's talk about that. There are so many things that can kind of stand in the way of people getting their story out. So I like to dive into that and, let people know this is a safe space. Be comfortable. I'm not going to, get on a podcast and share with everybody what you told me about. So, it's a variety of things. And I get to meet all kinds of personalities, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I'm sure you meet a lot of
Cori, I want to bring it.
Go ahead, Anissa.
Sorry. I wanted to bring it back to Cori, because you were a published author of how many books?
I've written 10 books. I've written 10.
10.
Yeah, I did 5 novels, and then I wrote 2 children's books. And then I kind of paused. I wrote a book for my business, and it's about how to write a book for your business. And then a couple of years ago, it was actually the summer of 21, I started feeling like, I was missing that art. And at that point, my kids were 6 and 8. So they were getting to the kind of more manageable part where they could, go off and play for a little bit, and then I'll fetch them a snack. So I would actually be able to sit down and work. And I had this story that just kept spinning in my head. And whenever I'm writing, I write fiction and I work with nonfiction authors. So I kind of bring the storytelling over to the other side to help them. But when I'm writing, I usually am inspired by something I've seen, either, heard in real life or seen on TV or something. And for that particular book, I was thinking about a TV show I had seen where there was a car wreck and some people took advantage of it and did some illegal things. And of course they, at the end of the show, they were arrested and everything. But I was thinking, what if something like that happened? And I turned it completely on its head. The people who were doing these things were completely innocent of what they were doing. They had no idea what was going on. There was a huge mix-up. And that was kind of what inspired me to work on this book. So I had to write it because I couldn't get it out of my head. And I think that's one of the most fun things about writing fiction, is that you can take these situations in real life and say, well, what if this happened instead? Because I would love for that to happen. Like when I wrote The Treasures We Seek, that was my most recent book. It came out in 2023. And one of the things that was kind of spinning in my head was I see so many women who find out that their partner's cheating. And I've always thought, wouldn't it be so interesting if, there's another woman, and a lot of times that other woman has no idea that he's cheating on her too. So it's like 2 women with one guy, and the guy's cheating on both of them. And they're both clueless. Well, how interesting would it be if those 2 women got together and became best friends, and kind of helped each other through the challenge? And so that was just one of the things that I had going in my head when I wrote the next book was, these things that you see in real life and that you want to kind of flip on its head and be like, no, this would be a cool way to have that turn out.
I just want to acknowledge a few of Ronald's comments to you. He says, amazing what you can do, what you visualize. And then he says, this is fascinating, Cori. Our daughter is an animator, artist, and illustrator and loves the Disney. I think nurtured on Disney is what he's saying. And he says, my wife endured my arrogance and self-reliance. Now I require help. And probably am amazed how resourceful in many ways. He says, the woman beside me is indescribable. So much she did over the decades. I have delayed gratitude. She had a brush with death, but was spared. Ronald had a birthday. I think it was yesterday or not was it the day before or yesterday? So we just want to also extend a beautiful, blessed birthday wish to you, Ronald, because you are a beautiful soul. And I would encourage you to reach out to Cori to get your story out there. You have much wisdom and depth, and I do think, seem like you're both in the States. I don't think you only need to be in the States to connect with Cori. For the others that do want to connect with her, the other aspiring writers, or like myself, have a manuscript in the drawer somewhere to get it revived, I think we just need to reach out to Cori. Cori, I wanna chat to you a little bit about what you said earlier on, because I had the privilege of having a writing coach too, and she was from New York. And I mean, we come from totally different worlds, but the gift of having that writing coach, because depending on that story and how raw that story is and how deeply difficult it is to reconnect and revisit to those parts of our lives that we were traumatized or wounded or being victimized or whatever the case may be, and to talk about it again and to almost bring the perpetrators back into the story, it's not an easy journey. So it's really an amazing partnership to have a writing coach. So I want to encourage those out there too. If you haven't got a writing coach and you're struggling, there's such a gift and blessing of having somebody hold that space for you and walk alongside with you on that journey. My decision to put it aside was actually, interestingly enough, because some of the people in the story that I was writing about were almost telling me, but I am making up the story. It's not 100% true. And that kind of made me feel very uncomfortable. And I thought, shouldn't I put the story out there? Because if they're saying it's not a full truth, I know it's my truth. Yeah. So I'm wanting to tell the story, but they are part of the perpetrators in the story. And I promised that I would use archetypal roles like hero, the jester, or the trickster, or the magician, or just so that it doesn't really, and the villain, so that it doesn't mention names. Cori, can you maybe guide those that have a story to tell? And our stories are bigger than ours. It's for others to learn, grow, and evolve and drive transformation. What would be your tips and guidance on how to actually pick yourself up again, whether you're an aspiring writer or you've got that manuscript lying in the drawers somewhere?
So as far as picking yourself up again from the story, I think it's definitely important to heal enough that you feel comfortable telling the story. Talk to a therapist, journal, do whatever it is that makes you feel like you come out on the other side and you can kind of look back on it and say, this sucked. It was awful, but it made me who I am today. And in a way, I am thankful for that journey. So there's the gratitude piece. And I think that when you get to that point, it's almost like if you've ever gone and listened to a speaker live and the speaker starts crying on stage, you're changed as an audience member as to how you see that speaker. So you're no longer seeing that speaker as this powerful person who has overcome so much. You start feeling sorry for them as soon as they start crying. So if you hit a point with your journey where you feel comfortable and you can say, all right, I could stand in front of, a group full of people and I could tell them about this and not cry. It's at that point that you can say, all right, this is where I can start telling my story. And I have had people cry with me while we have been on coaching calls. So I'm not saying, absolutely no tears, but sometimes it's that release where it's like, it feels so good to get it out. So you have to be at a point where you can tell it in an empowering way. And from the example that you were giving, I take it that, and this is like this for a lot of people, I take it that there are people who did some not very kind things, and now they're saying, hey, that's not what I did. So you're going to be in a position like that. And this is for anyone writing a story where you've got people who should have behaved better or they wouldn't show up in your book the way they're going to show up. You can't just be like, all right, I'm going to put you in there however it was. You can't go on and be like, well, my ex-husband was a total asshole. Am I allowed to say that? He's a total a-hole. You can't go into a book and say things like that unless your ex-husband is okay with these sort of things, because he can come back and say, hey, this is libel. You know, he could potentially sue you. He could potentially say, you know, I'm going to sue you if you don't adjust the way you've talked about me. So some of the books that we've worked on, we've had to go in and kind of pull back from the story and make it a little bit more generic. So you wouldn't call him your ex-husband. You could say a previous partner of mine. That way, you know, nobody's going to say, oh, it's definitely your ex-husband. It could have been a boyfriend. It could have been, you know, somebody you lived with. It could have been a lot of different people. So that opens it up. You have to watch describing certain things. So you don't want to give that person the specific title. You have to watch even describing like, oh, we lived on Oak Street. You know, if you're saying, oh, we lived on Oak Street, somebody could go back and say, oh, well, I was your neighbor on Oak Street. I remember that person. Thank you, Ronald. So, you know, you have to watch that you're not pinpointing a specific person. We did work on a book at one point where it was dealing with some people in the school system, teachers, principals, administrative officials. So we had to be very careful how we approached that. We couldn't say this person's, the principal at this elementary school. We had to say someone in the education department, you know, where we lived. That way it's not pinpointing and not calling them out. That way, if they do say, well, hey, this is me, you can say, that's your opinion. You know, I didn't name you. I didn't say anything in here that would indicate it was you. So you want to make sure you have a leg to stand on. As a publisher, I do put in some clauses at the front that say, you know, every story is up to open interpretation. I can't control what the reader thinks, but you still want to be very careful with your story. And absolutely, if you're self-publishing, make sure you do have some clauses in there that say, you know, this is from the way I remembered it. The story is up to the reader's interpretation. You can actually go online and find a lot of clauses that you can put in the front of your book. So I do recommend that people make sure they have the right stuff in there to protect them.
Cori, but what I want to also ask you though, because if the story, I'm comfortable sharing my story, and I have publicly also shared it, right? And parts of it is now in the Jamila and I have both contributed to being a co-author in the one book, and that was very recently now, I think it was June. But if you're running a business and the story is quite raw and you know, it's quite an intense storyline to it, how do you find the sweet balance between keeping a professional persona but not being afraid to share that story with the world?
So I think it depends on a lot of different things. If the story is integral to what your business is, and I know a lot of people start their businesses because of, you know, some situation that they've been through. And I think the balance you have to strike there is when you are writing about your story, sometimes you have to write a couple drafts of it. So when you start out writing your story, a lot of times it's going to be just a dump purge where you're getting everything out of your head. And maybe you are calling people a-holes or whatever, but you are just getting it all out. But you have to understand that when you're first doing that, it is cleansing for you. It is, you know, it's for you. If you're going to work on it yourself, definitely go through and make sure that these are things that your audience needs to hear and that it's important to your brand. Because if it's stuff that's like, oh my God, this is a horrible situation, and you're just purging all these things, you're dumping on people. And I've actually received emails where someone was telling their story and it was supposed to be like an introduction to their brand. And I felt like I was, you know, reading some trashy novel, just like, you know, like when you drive past a car wreck and you can't look away, you're like, what's going on over there? I didn't feel like I was empowered by this. I felt like she was just dumping out her story and trying to shock me. And that's never the right goal. The goal is always to empower. So if you're sharing your story, you have to look at it from that perspective. Am I educating? Am I empowering? Am I inspiring people? Because if I'm not, if I'm just, calling people out, then all you're doing is airing your dirty laundry. And yeah, it's going to get a lot of people going, oh my God, what's going on over there? But you don't want that kind of energy for your business. You want it to be educational, empowering, and inspiring.
Love that.
Yeah, love that. And also, Cori, can you possibly give us like the different routes to actually getting published? Like there's the option of self-publishing, there's the option of going with a publishing house. And what are the benefits, what are the advantages, disadvantages, and also from a cost perspective, which is the better route to go to take forward?
That could be a 3-day conference in itself. So I'm going to give you just the basics. There are 3 basic routes you can take to publishing. So independent, hybrid, which is what our model is, and then traditional publishing. Traditional is the way books have always been published. Like if you think about like the big 5 in New York, those are traditional publishing houses. Those are ones where you pitch to an agent. The agent reaches out to an editor at the publishing house and says, hey, I think this would be a good book to publish. And then they work out a contract between you and the publisher. So that's the route most people think about when they think published books. More recently, independent publishing has become very popular, and that's where the author writes the book, finds their own editor, finds their own cover designer, handles layout, or finds somebody to handle that, and they go on a self-publishing platform and publish by themselves. There are people who help coach people through that sort of thing. So if that's something that you're looking for, hunt for somebody to help you out, because it is a steep learning curve. And I know this because I did it all myself. That's how I figured it out. And then the kind of middle ground is hybrid. And that is where the author is paying for a package to produce the book, but the hybrid publisher is helping keep the standards. So like if people come to us, we have high standards on the type of books we're going to publish. We're a very specific brand. So like I work mostly with coaches and speakers who have a transformational story. It's not something where they are just writing down like, here's all the steps. It's like cracking open a little bit and showing, what's behind the scenes, what inspired that, why you are a good leader in this niche, that sort of thing. So when you approach a hybrid publisher, you have to find somebody who is, specific to your niche, somebody who has experience with that sort of work. And usually hybrids will have editors in-house. I know some do not. For me, I wouldn't just take somebody's book and publish it. I consider that to be a vanity press. We go through and we edit the books. We handle the layout, and we also have a cover designer. So we're working with the author, making sure that they approve of everything. Now, the difference between that and traditional is more like, it's almost like they're paying you to write a book for them to sell. So you get payment, but also they're making money off of your book. With a traditional house, they're going to be more in control of the final product. So like I know somebody who worked with a traditional house, and she was very committed to this one title, and they were like, no, we don't like that. This is what we're going with. And she didn't really have say on it. She could look at the edits, but ultimately, if the editor said, absolutely not, this is what it has to be, the editor was right and she was not. So there is a bit of a difference with that. With a hybrid, like with our model, we give a lot of guidance, but if the author is like, I really, 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 really want this, then we will find some way to make that work, because our goal is to make sure that the book works with your brand and within the marketplace. The traditional publisher, their goal is more to make sure that your book sells. With independent publishing, and I know that there's a lot of information here, so I'm just sharing like the very briefest I can. With the independent publishing, the author has full control, but also a lot of times the author doesn't know a lot about the marketplace or the niche that they're in. So it can be really challenging for the author to say, well, no, I want this cover. But then when it's up online, everybody might look at it and go, what the heck is this? And I've seen that happen before where like I've gone to a vendor event for authors and I'm looking at their book going, that was a cover that you clearly designed yourself or that you paid your cousin who is good with graphic design to do, but it's not a book cover. It's pretty, but it really doesn't work for what you're trying to pitch. So those are some of the issues that you can run into with independent or with, traditional. But I'm not ever going to say hybrid is the way for everybody to go either, because, you're paying for a package, you're paying for that guidance, you're paying for a lot of, here's my book. I'm going to go do my, my coaching business. You handle all this stuff because you're the expert. But, if that's not something that's within people's budgets, then I do recommend as an independent author that they shop around and find an editor that's going to work for them. Look at cover designers and see, what kind of stuff they're putting out. Reach out to other authors that you know or that you've seen online, because a lot of times they'll say, what, I recommend my editor, or I don't recommend my editor. So find out some things and absolutely work with professionals, no matter what way you decide to go. And the price point varies. Obviously, with traditional publishing, you're pitching, they're handling all of it, and you're getting typically you get an advance, some don't. The rules are different for everybody. But that's not necessarily going to be the best bang for your buck either. The way that we do it with hybrid, because I'm working with coaches and speakers, is I emphasize that we write a book that tells their story to connect, and builds that know, like, and trust, and then also sends people on to the next level. So it works like a lead magnet, but it has a lot of value to it. So most of the time when I'm working with people, I'm encouraging them to, give people a win in their book, but also say, what, at the end, if you need more help, please come back to me. I have coaching programs, or here's a free Facebook group, those sort of things, so people are like getting on their email list, continuing to connect. And, the ROI isn't just the book in that case for speakers and coaches. It's the book and then, oh, this person bought a program. So there are a lot of things to consider. And like I said, I could talk all day about this, but a little bit of the nuts and bolts, I would say figure out your budget, find professionals, and know what your goals are.
Cori, I think I'm definitely going to reach out to you after this, because you've just articulated exactly the dilemma that I'm finding myself in. As I've mentioned, I'm 3/4 way done. It's like, do I do this on my own? Do I get somebody to specifically who specializes in the cover design to do it? Or do I do the publishing thing? And it's very difficult to know what to do. But what the hook for me is, based on what you've shared, is that I am a speaker. I am also a leadership transformational coach. And I'm wanting to use this as a lead magnet. And I wasn't really sure where would be the sweet spot in the balance. So post our conversation today, I will be reaching out to you, because I have a goal for Feb 2025. This book needs to be gone out into the universe. I can't keep it any longer. I'm publicly declaring this. So I've got a lot of accountability partners out there. But I will be reaching out to you, Cori. So thank you for that clarity. It was very useful to be able to succinctly describe something which is so complex. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think, thank you so much for that, Cori. And it just gives you so much more understanding of the process of it. And I think that there's a lot of people in our audience, Ronald, you're one of them, who we would expect to, to write a book of your own and to get it published. And something that would really help a lot of us. We're always commenting about all the wisdom nuggets that you offer to us. And it would be really fantastic if, we could read about this in your upcoming book, Ronald. But even for me, and I think a lot of the people that are on this platform, initially when I read your bio, Cori, I was like, okay, maybe is this a fit for our podcast or not? But I think it's been the perfect fit for us. And Anissa, I think you'll agree with that, because of the type of people that we have, and because we've got so many inspirational people. And I think that their stories really need to be told. So you've really helped us, as Anissa said, in clarifying the process that we need to go through. And I do hope that a lot of people other than Anissa and myself will reach out to you and take your services on, because it's so important for us to be able to tell our story. And as you said, Anissa, our stories are so much bigger than us, because it's something that needs to be shared so that we can serve and help others in the experiences that we've gone through.
Absolutely, absolutely. Cori, I mean, I think we have a couple of minutes. We still have enough time left. I want to ask you, where would you like to take the conversation in terms of what you wanted to bring today? Because we've asked you a couple of questions and, it's felt like much of an interview, but it's a conversation. So I don't want you to only feel like we're questioning you around the process. Really, I want you to bring something special to us that you think would be useful to share with the audience as well. And what would that be?
Yeah. So I have a lot of people ask me if their book is any good. And I think that I am the worst person to ask that of, because it's not my book. If you don't believe that your book is good, then you have to step back and say, well, why am I believing this? Everything we do, if we're going to take a step forward, we have to believe in that step forward, right? If we're going to open a business, if we're going to get up on stage, if we're going to do a podcast here, we have to believe in what it is that we're putting out there. So anytime someone has reached out to me and said, hey, can you read this and tell me if it's any good? I know that that's coming from that little place that we all have deep inside that's like, the imposter syndrome. I see other people out there doing this. Am I going to be able to do it too? So I always will say, you know what, I'm going to look at your work and I'm going to tell you what I would adjust. Because I am not your teacher who's taken a red pen to this and correcting you. And that's something else that people think. When the editor is working with them, they're not correcting them. They're their ally. I am an ally in this process. I am the one who's looking at it and saying, from my perspective as a 20-year professional, in the writing and editing industry, these are some things that I would change that are going to help you connect better with your audience, that are going to kind of pare down the story that I feel like, you were just opening up and dumping out, this purge of feelings. Those are the kind of things I'm going to do. I'm not going to tell you this is a good book. Now, when we get to the end of the process, I know you will have a good book because you've taken the time, you've had that belief in yourself, and you know that it's going to be a good book. So you really have to come into it saying, this is this raw material, this is this kind of lump of clay that I have, and we're going to mold it together and we're going to work on it together. So if I can leave the viewers with anything, it's, step back and say, what are my goals? What is it I want to get out of this? And what professionals do I want to work with as an ally, not correcting me, but as a professional, on the same level? These are my peers. These are not people who are standing there going, no, this is wrong, this is right. Who do I want to help? Who do I want to empower me so I can empower others?
That's beautiful, because in the hero's journey, we are never quite alone. We do have allies. Mm-hmm. And I love that you use the word ally, because often when we're going through our difficulties, our challenges, and our stories, it can sometimes feel like you're alone. And when somebody gives you constructive feedback, it's almost as if, well, are you also not on my side? So I'm very glad that you mentioned that. Enlist the help of your allies in whichever shape or form that takes, just generally when you're not writing a book and you're in this hero's journey. But when you are writing a book, I mean, I can tell you there are times that I wasn't happy with my writing coach, because it was like, what the hell? This is what I want to say, and why are you saying this, and why you wanted to change it? But when I look at where I am now in the process, that ally is the one person that you need to keep by your side, show mutual respect, listen to understand, be curious, because with the curiosity, we're both learning in the process. It's a partnership. So I just want to say that from my side, that it is a partnership. So again, beautiful nuggets that you've left us with there. Jamila, anything you want to add to that comment there?
Yeah, there's many of us who feel that we can write, but we go through that phase of imposter syndrome. We have insecurities, and we don't quite know whether it is for us or it isn't for us. Is there anything that you can suggest, or any platform that perhaps you can suggest that people who are new to this can possibly join and maybe get some sort of um, encouragement and confidence through it? Is there anything like that that's available that perhaps people can go on to?
I don't know of anything offhand. I would say if you are looking for some support, there are some writing groups. I offer a writing coaching, group. I cap it at 6 people, so that is always something that's available. As far as building yourself up and getting confidence, I would say sometimes sometimes with writing you do have to kind of sit down and go it alone for a little bit, and then if you're a professional, you can always hunt around, like go in a Facebook group and say, hey, are there some other coaches who are working on books? I was wondering if we could do some accountability. I guarantee people are going to respond and say, yep, let's do it. Even if you have 2 or 3 people, get some accountability partners together if you're looking for like a free version of what I was offering. And all you really need to do is like exchange a chapter every couple weeks, read it, and then give each other feedback. Hey, this is something I'm curious about. This is something that really surprised me, and I feel like maybe it was dumping out too much. It depends on what your story is. Especially with the stories that are really triggering, you do have to watch that. So I would say, if you do have a story that's something that, if somebody's reading it, it might make them go, oh my goodness, I can't keep reading this. Trim back a little bit on that and focus more on the feelings instead of the actual act. They're like, if there was an act of violence against you, then you don't really want to go into details about how you were hurt. You more want to say, this happened, but here's how I felt right afterwards. I felt sick to my stomach. I had bruises. Whatever it is that you can anchor more into the feeling afterward. Because if you're going with an act of abuse, especially, then you're going to be triggering other people. And, those are a lot of times the people you want to help. So I know that was an extra layer of of what to do on top of that, but definitely reaching out to other people who are going through the same journey that you're going through is going to be helpful to you. As an author myself, I've found that over the years, as I've talked to more and more authors, I've definitely gained more confidence in telling people I'm an author. This is what I write, because it's more normalized. And I think that when you are normalizing that sort of thing, it just becomes like oh yeah, everybody's doing this. Like everybody cleans their houses. Everybody, runs to the grocery store. Everybody's writing books. Like it becomes one of those sort of things. And at this point, like I've been in my business for almost 9 years now. I've talked to a lot of authors, and my kids even think it's normal. Like when my daughter was 5, she walked in the office and she's like, hey, I want to write a book. We're going to write about my stuffed monkey coming to life and granting wishes. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, like this is normal to them.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Cori, just one thing. There's this. What is it? Is it that you can write a book over a weekend retreat? Because there's all of these things surfacing in the ether. Come and write your book over a weekend and get it done, or do it within 90 days. If this is also supposed to be a cathartic experience, not all books are about your traumas and your wounds. And really, if it's cathartic to write just generally, and you're coming from an empowered position, you potentially could write it within a weekend. But please enlighten us. I mean, is this a facade that's out there in the market? I'm hugely frustrated by it. Is it a facade or is it possible?
So this is one of my soapboxes. The the weekend book writing thing, from my experience, and I'm somebody who has twice written a book in 6 weeks. From my experience, I would say that you can get a lot accomplished in a weekend, but if you're thinking about, you know, if you're thinking about like how long it actually takes to type your book, even if you were just typing stream of consciousness, which is just, whatever's coming in, just type, 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 type. I don't believe that you could actually type an entire book in a weekend. Now, what you can easily accomplish in a weekend is sitting down with a coach and figuring out what your topic is, your audience, your purpose, getting an outline done. You could probably write, I would say, even 3 or 4 chapters in a weekend, but you're not going to come out of a 2 or 3 day retreat with a fully written manuscript that is of quality. It's not possible. You can get a lot done in that amount of time, but please sleep and shower and, brush your teeth and eat and all those good things that make us happy, healthy humans. As far as the 90-day thing, it's doable, but again, you're going to be pushing yourself. So I think it's important for us to look at what else we have going on in our lives and how important it is to have the book and have some normalcy in our lives. Because if you are forcing that book out, it's going to be strained. I mean, we all know what it looks like when we're in a rush and we have to hurry up and make a lunch and, run out the door. We are getting our sleeves caught on things. I have a long necklace I wear that always gets caught on something when I'm trying to rush. We are tripping over things. We're dropping things. We've got our arms full of stuff. That's going to be your book writing process if you're trying to cram it into a super short amount of time and you've never done it before. So you have to think, how messy do I want it to be? How obtrusive do I want it to be to my life? Because if you have, kids and, friends and networking and you're running a business and then you're also like, oh, I'm going to write a book. You have to work that into your life. And the way I like to do it is a 5-month program. I think that's completely doable. I do think 3 months is doable if you're really committed to it. You are confident in your writing and you absolutely know how to speak to that audience. I think you can come up with a pretty good book in 3 months. But when I had a 3-month or a 6-month program, I had people pushing, if they joined the 3-month, they always ended up pushing out and doing about 5 months. So that's why I adjusted my program to a 5-month program. And in that amount of time, even if you're thinking like, I'll write 2 chapters per month, if 2 chapters are about 5,000 words, then in 5 months, you've got 50,000 words for your book. So that's a pretty good sized book. It helps to break it down like that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so what is a good size and, what is not a good size? So like, should it be 50,000 or more? Is there a standard? Is there, before you put a book out?
Yeah, there are standards for each genre. So if you're writing something, romance, fiction, any of that kind of stuff, make sure you research that. But for the nonfiction genre where you are like a coach and speaker putting out stuff for your business, you don't want to go under 100 pages. So I would say 25,000 is your word cutoff. Like make sure it hits 25,000 words because that'll get you over 100 pages. If you're looking for the high end, I would say 40,000, 50,000 is definitely like a much bigger book. And that's going to be around 350 pages around in there. But all of this also depends on the size of the book, the layout, everything that goes into it. So if you have, pictures that you want to put in, keep in mind that that's going to also stretch out the book size.
Sure. Any more questions on your side, Jamila?
Questions on my side, Anissa. This has just been such an educational hour. And I'm so glad, Cori, that you've come on and you've enlightened us on this subject that's, I think, very dear to both Anissa's and my heart. So very encouraging for me. I loved listening to everything that you had to say, and I look forward to engaging more with you on this. And Anissa, that's brought us to the end of our hour. Can you believe it?
I can't believe it. I just want to acknowledge those that have been here on Instagram. Sorry, we were so captivated by every word Cori spoke, and I forgot to acknowledge those that are here. Thank you for everyone, Simone, T. Daniels, Medina. I don't know who Whip Me is, but thank you for being here. And please do reach out to Cori should you have an aspiration to share your story with the world. I just have one last burning question. The other thing I'm noticing, Cori, is that everyone is trying to be a bestseller on Amazon. Is that something that you do too? Is that something you encourage? And is that authentic that they are a bestseller? I'm not sure I understand it all, and I'm not sure if we have a lot of time. But if you had to succinctly respond to that question, is it something we must aspire to be a bestseller to on Amazon?
So, if you're trying to be a bestseller on Amazon, it's really a marketing campaign. There are a couple tricks that you do that, you can get a certain number of sales and you become a bestseller. And really what that's saying, if you hit that number one spot, is you're not a permanent bestseller. Your book isn't always going to be number one, but it's saying that, you've put in the effort to reach a lot of people. You've been working on your book launch. A lot of times people do it around the launch. We do that as well. We always do a bestseller campaign on Amazon. And what our bigger goal is not just to hit number one that one day, but it's to create a buzz around the book and to get people excited about the book, because a lot of times it's very hard for a new author to say, hey, I wrote this book. So we kind of position it as like, let's shoot for a goal. So tell as many people as you can. We always help our authors by giving them examples of like what to post on social media, what to email to their list, getting partners for it. So, if you have several coaches in the same niche, you might say, hey, could you guys share this with them too? And really it's about partnership and, reaching a big goal. I think it's a lot of people are starting to understand that everybody is an Amazon bestseller because so many people have done this campaign. So I don't think it has the same punch that it did 5 years ago, but it's still something that we do. And there are absolutely people who will pay companies to help them with this sort of goal. And really it's about getting a lot of people to download your book or to purchase your book. And it's a celebration. People get really excited when they see that the numbers are getting smaller. And I always tell my authors, like, post about that. Hey, you're number 5, and everybody go grab the book, because it gets people excited about you and your brand and your accomplishment. So I do think it's a nice thing to do. And I always tell my authors, if you don't hit number 1, please don't cry. It's okay, because you've still stirred up a lot of attention around your book. And that was the bigger goal.
Thank you so much. I think you are the epitome of grit, grace, and gratitude. You are the embodiment of that, not only in your own journey of having started writing books and 10 times an author, but I also think what I love what you're saying, to sum it up, our beautiful conversation is going well with Ronald's last comment, a lasting book decades later. This is the legacy that we want to leave behind. And I think for those that don't know Cori, and from the little bit that I've read, those that joined us later, that is what Cori's mission is, I think, is for you to put a legacy out there that not only your own family can learn, grow, and transform and be more empowered with, but everyone else out there that listens or reads your story rather. Cori, anything else you want to say in closing out? And Jamila, before we say goodbye, Cori, do stay on for a short debrief afterwards.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on. And for anyone who's watching, if you're interested in reaching out to me, you can go to my website. It's auroracoriolispublishing.com. So you can see how to spell it up there. Absolutely reach out to me on the contact form there. I'm also on, I think, all social media platforms as Cori Wamsley. I'm always happy to answer questions and connect with other speakers and coaches and even authors.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Jamila?
much, Cori. Thank you so much for being here and for enlightening us on this very, very interesting topic and something that we find very dear to us. And thank you to all our listeners for engaging with us today, especially Ronald, our our usual. I think we need to include Ronald onto our platform, Anissa, and have him as one of the
I think
guests
so.
along with the other
Uh,
guests, because he's
Absolutely.
so committed and so loyal to us, and always, sharing such insightful words of wisdom. But thank you so much, Cori, and maybe we should just put the publishing company in our
We
comments,
will.
Anissa, so that people can come back to it, and for those who will be watching the recording, it'll be accessible
Yeah.
to them.
Absolutely, we will do that. So I'm going to end the live. We are 4 minutes over, but thank you for staying the course with us, and go and embark on that hero's journey and reach out to Cori. On that note, bye for now. Until next week, we'll see you again. Enjoy Women's Day for those in South Africa.